So hi, for those of you that didn't come yesterday, I talked yesterday on metrics-driven content development. In other words, using metrics to make content decisions. And I brought these, by the way. I put a bunch up if you want to grab one. It was dealing with sort of the customer life cycle and how you build governance around the customer life cycle. And I've seen a lot of life cycle drawings over the past several days. It's only been 2 days, but it feels like a long time. So feel free to come grab one of these, or if you got a business card and you want to talk on all of you next door. What I kind of want to do at this point is I want to turn away from the customer lifecycle side of things and talk about the internal lifecycle of governance and building that in, right? And the way that I keep changing the title of this particular presentation, and so right now I've got first Stealthy and Visionary. The truth is everybody here, we're already all bought in, right? We paid to show up, even if we just paid for our travel, right? Everybody is here because we believe in this stuff. Even if you are a reluctant believer, you still believe in it enough to show up, to care, to listen, to attend more sessions than you sit out, right? The rest of the world is not here. And the rest of the world is the problem that we have to address when it comes to governance, because it's easy for me to, I don't need your buy-in, I have it. I knew it the moment you walked in, you chose to be with me, even if it was because you thought this would be more interesting than whatever else is going on. I at least had that much, right? We don't have that with the people who aren't showing up at this conference. And so one of the struggles that we have, one of the jokes is, user experience would be so easy if it weren't for the user, right? And it's that same sort of issue with governance. Governance wouldn't be a problem if we didn't have people to govern, right? People who actually had to buy in and to behave in the ways we want them to behave, or use the systems the way we tell them to be used. So when I think about how do you communicate governance to everybody else in your organization, whether it's the people you have to sell governance to because they're responsible for your budgets, or the people you have to sell governance to because you need them to actually do something the way that you think it should be done, there are some real challenges in that messaging. And the way that I think about it, and this is not new, other people have talked about this, I've seen things about making it fun, I've talked about making it invisible, right? And in a way I'm saying some of the same things. The way I'm talking about it is first Stealthy and Visionary. And those are the three ways that I look at how are you going to get your governance message to the people who need to hear it, whether they want to or not. In this room, I don't have to worry about it. Out of this room, I have to worry about it. So the first idea is governance first. And really all I'm trying to say here is start with governance. That's not the situation we're in. It's not the situation you hear about. Most of the time you hear that we've got some serious problem going on and we need to fix it. If only we had been governed. Right? And the idea is that you can build governance right from the beginning. And I'm not saying that if you haven't, it's too late. Because what I am saying is that you can build governance at any time around anything that you want. If you want to be grassroots, great. Build governance around the grass. So this is our framework. Everybody's got a framework. Everybody's got 6 hexagons and a circle and an icon, and everyone's got their way of saying this is how governance should work. This is ours. And we say, oh, there are 6 facets to governance that you have to pay attention to. That's fine. I'm not here to sell you on my framework. What I am here is to say that this framework is designed in such a way that it can apply to anything, no matter how big and how small. If I'm coming into your organization and we're building governance from the ground up, I am going to look at all 6 of these hexagons. But if you come in and you say, look, we have this little project. Our project is that we've got incoming content, and we want to map the domain of the email address to a source list so we can filter the email as it comes in. That's all we want to do. It's not quality of email. It's not even quantity of email. It's just, can we just route the email correctly? Can we just do our own little zip code thing? And I'd say, great, but I'll tell you what, we're going to do your little zip code thing using these 6 hexagons. And we're going to focus on the governance of this tiny little thing. The idea is that as you build this, it changes your status quo little by little. This stuff snowballs. So governance does not have to be the giant wet blanket you throw over your organization, right? It's that little kick in the pants in the little places where it matters, and it can slowly catch on. And that's the whole point of grassroots, right? We think of the governance cycle as this. Governance over here is talk. And I know that I'm talking to people who I don't need to convince about governance, so I'm going to be diminishing, and I'm going to say governance is all talk. It's all talk, really. It's, don't you think we should do this? I think we should do this. Why isn't this person doing this? Talk, talk, talk. Let's have a meeting. Let's talk. Let's whiteboard. Yay, talk. What does talk do? Talk, you can take pretty pictures and put it up on the wall. What you need to do with that talk, what governance is supposed to drive through metrics, through process, through people, through technologies, is you're really creating projects that change your operations. This is where it matters. Talk, 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 talk. Yeah, but change something, fix something, stop something from happening. So all of that talk says, you know, we could do this. We could ask people to do that. We could install this. We could make this happen. It becomes a project. If the project is large enough, like a cleanup effort, like a migration, like an installation, you're going to get a project manager, and you're going to bring in consultants, and you have a big, giant thing. But it doesn't have to be. It could be one little project that somebody does by themselves, and they create the new normal, which is from now on, I shouldn't have to do that project again. If the project was built with the hexagons around it. If it was built with governance. Otherwise, you know what, I'm going to clean up my email. I hate I have so much stuff in my inbox. I'm going to spend a whole day and I'm going to clean it all out. Yay! That's a project. But have I created a new normal? Only if I'm willing to change my behavior and not let that email inbox fill up again. But I'm not going to do that. I'm cleaning it up because it's just a nuisance. So I am not building governance into my own life. And it's a problem because then it just fills up again. Then your desk is messy, then your stuff isn't tagged, then things can't be found, then search is a problem, right? So all of it is about building it with a vision for sustainability, right? If you build a system without the governance already in place, it is outdated at launch because it is falling apart from that one day. There are people who think if I bring in a technology, it will solve all my problems. And they're right for a moment. Right? Because what do they have to do when they bring in that new technology? Bring everybody together, clean it all up, design a whole bunch of new processes, empty the inboxes. Yay, it works. Technology solved everything. And then within a year or a month, it all starts to fall apart. Why? Because you haven't changed behavior. You haven't built for sustainability. You can't read the words here, which I have to say is a bit amusing. But basically it says that planned obsolescence is not a business strategy. If you are designing something that is going to die as soon as you create it, that is a bad project. So governance has to come first. But, says everybody, I can't do that if it's just me and I don't have the systems and I don't have the time and I'm not measured that way. I get a lot of that, by the way. We do a lot of work in marketing and content space. And it's like, yeah, but nobody measures me on the quality of my tagging, right? I'm not measured by how good search is. I'm measured by X, right? And that's okay, I get that. So one of the challenges in doing this is we think, okay, well, how do we minimize the impact of governance? So if we're going to start with governance, we are going to add governance onto everything. Doesn't that seem like a horrible burden? How are we going to sell that? How are we actually going to do it? When am I ever going to get a clean inbox? I mean, really. So what has to change? So there are sort of three approaches. The one in red at the top is to reduce the actual impact, right? Let's do governance smaller. I actually don't think that's a real option. If your governance is too big, it's too big. Get it. But I think that if the right people are showing up and they're talking about the right things and doing the right things, it is not too big. It's not, hey, if it's a job for two people, let's do it with one. No, it's a job for two people. But I do think a lot of people start where governance is just too big, and I'll talk about that. So reducing actual impact, I don't really believe that's true unless you have a governance problem to begin. You can reduce the perceived impact. So this is the idea where if it's part of the culture and it's part of your new normal, it's the system does it for you, it's everybody gets it, you're trained how to do it from day one, you're politely reminded, it's gamified, it's whatever you need to do, it doesn't seem so big and ugly anymore, right? There's a big difference between doing your tax forms by hand and doing your tax forms using TurboTax, but it's the same process. They've just found a way to make it seem a little more fun or at least a little less burdensome. That's great, and I do encourage that. That gets you there. What I'm really aiming for is what I call coyote governance. It's a term, it's a Native American term known as coyote teaching. And the idea is that you tell stories, and they have messages underneath it, but the children hearing the stories don't realize they're learning, right? And that's what we do that at conferences. That's Speaker 101. Tell stories, right? So you don't feel like you're sitting there hearing me lecture. You're sitting there, and you're engaged in my narratives. So coyote governance is about sort of doing the governance without people realizing they're doing it. And you do it by calling it something else, by putting it within a larger framework. And that gets to sort of the vision of it. All of governance comes down to your socialization strategy. How are you communicating governance? So let me talk about governance stealth. The idea of governance stealth, this is your coyote governance, right, is you're doing governance without it being clear that it's called governance. In fact, I have heard the argument, and I can totally buy into it, that you should never use the G word ever. I'm fine, say everywhere you say governance, put in the word stewardship. That's it. It means exactly the same thing, but it's not the big G word, right? Which, government. We don't like big government. We don't like big governance, right? We talk about it as though it's a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but let's rebrand it. Stewardship. Stewardship also implies that there's a steward. So it does require a resource, it does require attention. And the idea here is to build it in such a way, targeted messaging, right, focused involvement, so that the actual and perceived burdens are as small as possible and the awareness goes down. So how do we do this stealth? I've got a number of ideas. First, find out exactly who cares and leave everybody else out of it. This is the opposite of big governance. This is not the big blanket you throw on top of your organization. This is targeted. So if I'm going to build a governance program about managing those email addresses, do I need a representative from every team in my organization? No, and I would be ridiculous to do so. But you want to go to the big 6 hexagons? Framework. I've worked for an organization that actually built this. And these are their domains. So they got all these domains and they put the governance in the middle, and then there's these subdomains that are off on the side, and we're managing who we talk to, and see all those little circles and triangles? Those are people. And we're going to have the people talk, and we're going to set up a thing, and yay! And they did nothing for 2 years, but they had this. I mean, this was actually built and implemented. This wasn't just pretty pictures. They had teams, they had roles, and everybody knew if you said, who's part of the governance team, they could raise it and tell you who they were and what they were doing. And if you stopped and looked, you'd realize for 2 years they made not one decision that stuck. Why? Because, oh, I'm going to do this little email thing. Oh, well, who's from this? And they just piled it on, and it's a giant meeting that wasted everybody's time, and they hated it. So next time they wouldn't show up for the meeting. But they had a thing where you needed a majority vote, and so you have to wait till everybody can be there. And it just bogged down in the bureaucracy of their government. Big framework is not a way of life. What you're trying to do is figure out only who matters, not a person more and not a person less. And you don't need everybody at the same level of involvement. This is my philosophy. It's that when you go up to the C level, all you need is awareness. You don't even need buy-in. You don't even have to convince them that it's a good idea. You just have to have them say the sound bites every now and then. That's it. And to know that there are people focusing on that so that they don't have to. I believe that. You get buy-in at the next level, but even buy-in is just enough to say, I'm going to sign off on that. And I get what you're doing, and I'm glad that we're doing it. But again, I'm not even involved. I just want to know, right? This is us. We're down here. We're the ones actually making the plans and getting the stuff done. Or these are, you know, sort of your line workers who are actually doing the emails and tagging the content and whatever they're trying to do. And the boss has to have support because you've got to have the budget for it. But you can do it down here. And that little email domain problem lives here. That's it. That's good. And when that works, something else will work and something else will work. And every now and then it bubbles up to the awareness level and says, wow, we're doing that? Good enough for me, because things are getting done. Now, granted, that's not very exciting as a governor if you're trying to get a promotion. This is not about fame and fortune, right? But if you are trying to get something done, I think it's okay to be down at this level and think of it as an approach. Now, if you want to make that into a big governance framework document, you can build a racy chart. And we've actually done this for a lot of clients. What's missing here is the secret sauce, which is what are each one of these rows representing? You know, so okay, here's consulted and informed and responsible, but for what? And I took that out of the slide because that's their business. But the idea was, is they say, well, that changes and this system happens and this is a problem we have to fix. So which of these teams needs to be involved? And the idea, of course, is the darker it gets, the more involved they have to be. So if you see a row, not counting these section rows, where there's a lot of gray, this is an all hands on deck kind of problem. And they only happen once every quarter. The stuff that generally happens that's mostly clear, that's mostly white, those are things that happen more often, because the stuff that happens more often doesn't require everybody. You can take the time to do this analysis. You'd be surprised how easy it is to build a racy chart once you remember what the R stands for and the A stands for. So that leads to governing the governors. This is another part of stealth, right? Your governors are the canary in the coal mine, right? They're your test case, right? They're the ones you throw into a governing situation and say, now try. Right? And when I said, here's a company that's got big framework and they got nothing done, well, they failed because they didn't govern themselves. They overgoverned everybody else, but paid no attention to the fact that what matters was actually making decisions, getting things done, getting money for budget. So when you think about your governing process, you've got to test it on yourself. And a lot of organizations will do that. Well, gosh, if we're going to do governance, let's govern ourselves and show that it works. Great, go for it. And there are metrics for that. So you can go through the various metrics. So if you're going to governs, I had fun with that slide. You can basically say, all right, what do we want to measure? So one thing you can measure, for example, is attendance. You have governance meetings. Are people showing up? Now, if that's your only metric, guess what? Everybody shows up. Governance is like, yay, and nothing gets done because the meetings are bloated and everybody's like, oh, but I showed up. That's tied to my performance, right? It's like, yeah, but you didn't perform. So what are the other metrics? So in the case of the 2 years of no process, it would be like, well, how big is your backlog of problems? Is that going down? Are you solving problems? Are you making decisions? Are there more policies in place? Or other things, are you training? Are you roping more people in? Are you finding new life? Are you finding other things to do? Where have you implemented your policy? And there's a lot of different things that you can look for. Here, this was specifically around taxonomy, but there's no reason it has to be just taxonomy. It could be whatever the scope is. It's data quality, it's security, it's whatever you want to look at. So the key, of course, with those metrics is you find metrics you can actually geek out about. And keeping in mind that everybody geeks out about different things. So if you're talking about the domain around data security, there are going to be some great metrics for data security that your data security geeks are going to geek out about. And those are the metrics you want to focus on. Why? Because it's stealthy, it's coyote. They don't realize that it's talking governance. They're talking data security. That's my job, that's what I do. I do marketing, give me marketing statistics. I do sales, give me sales statistics. I do HR, give me some HR statistics. Look at enrollments in the health plan. That's what we're after. Great, that's a metric. Govern it. What does it take to make it go up? What are you doing to make that happen? You know, the one place where metrics like really live up the wazoo is the sales process. It's the prospecting. It's filling the funnel and phone calls and meetings because they have metrics at every step along the way. And good salespeople live those metrics. They know that 9 out of 10 times they're going to get a refusal, but that one time they don't, they get a meeting. But they need 3 meetings in order to get the secondary meeting, and they need 5 of those to make the sale. And they know that because whenever those things start to move, there's a shift somewhere in the world and they can address it. You figure out what those metrics are. A lot of times the metrics that get thrown out into governance seem irrelevant to the people who actually have to do the work. Take data breach. I think data breaches are really important. But I don't know what I do that's a data breach other than try not to use flash drives and leave stuff in a car that can get stolen. Remember that story from yesterday? So that's about it, right? But I'm not going to live and breathe data breach, except I should, right? I should live and breathe. I should be very conscious of where I bring my phone and whether that's facing the, I mean, there's all that stuff, but I don't, that's not what geeks me out, right? Either teach me to geek out on it or find something else that I can be engaged in. And there are a lot of different ways in which you can look at metrics. I talk about metrics in here, I talked about metrics yesterday. It depends on what it is that you're looking for. So these are graphs, and it's almost like, who cares? They're cool looking. Right? This is Google Analytics. This is fill rates for product data. This is basically sort of as your funnel thing. It's dealing with the conversions for people who are buying products. Right? And I don't really care what anything stands for, but if blue is good, then I'm happy. And if green is good, well, then I'm unhappy. And that's all you need to do. And in fact, stuff like this we've done in a competitive environment. You bring out the natural competitor in people. Very gamified. It's cool. What you do is you take a graph like this, and you show the 12 divisions, and you show them each their own graphs. And you see one graph that does this, boom, and all the other graphs don't. And the people whose graph went boom can get really confident and cocky, and it's like, ah. And what happens when you meet next week? Show the same 12 graphs. Every week, 12 graphs, 12 graphs, 12 graphs. You'll see who cares. And you'll watch people care a little bit more every week. And at some point, all of the graphs are going to go kaboom. You still show those graphs, but move on to the next one. Why? Because you've done your 6 hexagons in your little project. You can now move forward. You've built sustainability into that process. And that's where the vision comes in. So the goal is to get to the vision. What is the big picture? Why do I care? So the key to vision is optimism. I have been at this conference now for my 2nd day. A lot of the topics, we talked about security, security mattering. Security is not optimistic. In fact, I've heard only one optimistic thing said about security, and it came from Cheryl McKinnon from Forrester, and she said that companies that are paying attention to privacy are worth more. Ooh, that's optimistic. Security counts. There's the message of optimism. I can still talk security, but I have to find a way to make it optimistic. I am sort of tired with the idea that governance is a negatives reducer. It will prevent this, stop this, slow this. That's not engaging. You're not engaging my imagination. It's an awesomeness enabler. If we didn't have to worry about that, we could do this. If my data are good, then I can do that. I can make great business decisions if only, right? If I saw the whole pipeline, I could maximize the pipeline at every step along the way. And the metrics drive that. right? And ultimately, it's about the capabilities. Where are you trying to go? The whole premise of gamification, which is what that circle really comes from, right, is the idea that you have that feedback in there. So if your original motivation is fear, and let's be honest, it is. It's fear for your job, it's fear for getting things done, it's fear for missing a deadline, it's fear for whatever, fine. And the fear will influence your behavior long enough to fix that problem. You will patch the leak, but you will not build a better boat. So what you need is the feedback, and the feedback says, great patching job, what else needs a patch, right? It's whether it's positive feedback or it's just a number that says patch harder. Doesn't matter. That feedback is really important. We get that. Governance metrics, great. But what you're trying to do is change the motivation behind it through optimism, through possibility. And all of that really happens through what I think of as just branding, right? This is the funifying part of it. On the left-hand side are examples of slogans. We're not talking governance. There's no word in there governance, but we do talk about data. We do say, gosh, that's better. There's only one us on every channel. And if you say that enough, people will pay attention to the brand. They will pay attention to the consistency across the web and social media and print, because that's what you're trying to say, right? We need to be one us, because that's your concern, right? And you're trying to be everywhere, right? Or you look at it this way, right? If we can't read our customer minds, we're not trying hard enough, right? It's this whole idea that we have the data, why aren't we using it, right? Push, 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 push. Be one step ahead of a customer, right? The put data to work is the example. And then over here, we've done buttons. My favorite is the geeky one. We need to facet the truth. That's my favorite. But you know, what's your culture, right? Pick a slogan, and we have many more of these, right? We've done another thing for another client where they have stickers. Every time they have a project, everybody involved in the project can design a sticker. All the stickers are wildly different because people have different levels of technology. They create the stickers all go on an orange cone because they're putting data to work. And every time they do a project, they put data to work, and they have the stickers, like the suitcase with the stickers all over it. And you can see more and more orange cones and more stickers popping up, and you just get that sense that people are actually doing something. You feel the momentum. And my most favorite is just coming up now, where we took one of our big fancy drawings, the kind of thing that, you know, is great on the wall, but has yet to be done. But a third of the company was actually involved in building this thing. And it comes in this big 11 by 17 piece of paper to review it. And the decision was, we're making them into placemats. So all of the break rooms, all of the conference rooms are going to have placemats with our stuff on it, because it's something that everybody worked in and can take pride in. And you don't think those things when you think governance, because we're not talking about it, because we've snuck it under the radar. So I would be happy to talk about more of these things with you guys. Really, the bottom line is you need to build sustainably from the beginning. You bring in the right people, the people who care. You make sure you've got metrics that matter. You tie it to a vision. And then ultimately, you make it look easy, which sounds easy, but isn't. It really requires the thinking. And each one of these steps enables the one beneath. Get the right people in and figure out what they care about. Then you'll have the metrics to get more people caring. You see how it snowballs? And that's really the idea. And so with that, I will say, put your metadata where your mouth is, and thank you.